CJ Peterson, and welcome to The Journey is Real. We talk to real people with real passions who share a real portion of their hearts. Today, my guest is Shane Flemens, and we're going to be talking Keeping It Real, R-E-E-L, with conviction. Thank you for coming on today, Shane.
Thank you very much for having me, Miss Peterson.
When we talked about keeping it real, it's actually kind of a play on words. The title is spelled real, R-E-E-L, like a fishing reel. It also stands for the conviction portion, which is keeping it real, R-E-A-L. We're going to start with the passion of fishing, though, first. How did that become a passion for you, and what does that mean to you personally?
Well, as a little boy, we had a pond and a farm. We had cows and horses and chickens and pigs and all this kind of stuff. And we had an orchard, cherries and peaches and apples all around us. So I used to live in the apple capital of the world, which I'm still here, but it's not the apple capital of the world. So all I knew growing up was fruit and farms, and we had a pond.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was 5 and 6 years old, as soon as daylight hit, I was scurrying down the road to catch my little grasshoppers and dig my worms in the orchard. And I learned how to tie hooks. Well, I didn't realize at 6 years old, you shouldn't go to the water by yourself. But so I started getting spanked all the time because
you were enjoying fishing.
I just wanted to fish. That's it. I didn't care about nothing except for fishing. I wouldn't eat all day. So it was little town called Rock Island. I bet you there was probably 600 people, 500 people there. And I would scavenge all myself to all the little ponds. So my family would look for me all day and they couldn't find me.
Oh, no.
So I would come home when it was dark out and I would get in trouble. So the next morning I would grab my fishing pole as soon as it's light and I'm down the road again.
There's this song, a country song, and it's something about fishing, and the wife made him make a choice between the marriage or the fishing, and I'm gonna miss her. Oh, look, there's a bite.
That's me.
But that's what this is reminding me of.
It's kind of the same scenario. So, I started getting a little older, so they wouldn't, worry as much. But I would, I got spanked a lot. But I would always grab my fishing pole, and on the way, I would grab a little jar, and I would catch little grasshoppers on the way and little moss. And I knew when I got to the orchard, I could catch, get my worms.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned how to tie hooks, and I learned how to put 2 hooks on one so I could catch 2 at a time. And my grandma came down one day and she's like, Shane, look at the deer. And she says, I never looked up because I was like, Grandma, I'm going to miss my bite.
Focus.
I know. So that's how I ended up crab fishing out in the Bering Sea.
Nice.
Feels all right, yeah.
That's quite a leap, though, going from little kid on a pond to crab fishing in the Bering Sea. I mean, that's hefty stuff.
It's definitely different. It's you have to have a mindset out there. It's pretty scary.
So what was that like? What made you make that leap?
You know what? I fished, all my life. I like everywhere from salmon to, when I started as a kid catching catfish, and we caught a couple big ones that almost pulled me in one day, but that's another story. I caught a great big one, and I wouldn't let go. And it started dragging me and my foot went in, and I was probably 5 or 6, and my left foot hits and goes all the way in up to and I wasn't going to let go. And I pulled it out, and it was a great big carp. I bet you it was probably 7, 8, maybe 9 pounds.
Wow.
I got it up out of there, and I was super excited. So
God bless you, because I'm too ADD to do fishing. I did it once with my grandparents, and I caught a 7-pound catfish, and they were so proud. But I was like bored out of my skull. I mean, I was like looking every which direction I could. I'm like trying to find a way. I'm doing stories in my brain. I'm like, yeah. So you have to have like a real drive for it and a real passion for it. So
you gotta have passion.
How did you make the leap?
I don't know. I was in Wenatchee. Obviously, I got in trouble back in the day, and I was a little turd, and I was a black sheep of my family. And I was in jail, and I met a guy from Peru. And I think I was in there I think it was not paying my child support. I think it was. And, it's important to pay your support. So I was in there for that, I think. And I met a guy from Peru, and he started talking about fishing, and him and I started talking about fishing. He's like, hey, we should go to Alaska. I'm like, Alaska? And I think I was I was like, what's up there? And he's like, fishing, you can make money. I go, really? anyways, I got out and I'm talking to my family, and I think I had like $700 or $800 to my name, and I
That's not enough to pay for child support.
no, not enough. They'll throw you in jail for that.
You get in trouble again.
Yes, don't have kids until you're ready.
Public service announcement. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, for the first one, broadcast that.
There you go.
Um, so I get out and he contacts me and he's like, "Hey Shane, let's go." So I told my family I'm gonna go, and they're like, "Okay." So I got my $300-$400 ticket, and I had like $100 some left in my name. I get to Alaska, and I make a long story short, I meet a Christian family throughout this. I how I got there and how it all it's a pretty neat story, and I'm just because of like how it happened, how I met the Christian family, and they showed up on the boat that I was on because I wasn't making no money, and they go, "Do you want a job?" And I was like, "Absolutely." And it was a Christian family. From there, I made 24,000 my first 2 months salmon fishing, and I was
Wow.
hooked. I was hooked. I mean, I was like, "This is the greatest job in the world."
Nice. You
The
get to
bars
combine
didn't.
your passion of fishing and you can
Yeah,
take care of your kids.
yeah, I was taking care of my kids. The bars didn't shut down, and uh, it was a catch 22 for me at that time. 21 years old, and the bars didn't shut down. I made tens of thousands a month, and it was
Uh-oh. That sounds like another recipe for disaster.
well, it definitely is. I mean, it is. It's the last frontier. You got to remember, Alaska's the last frontier, so it's pretty wild out there.
Yeah, I can imagine. We have
It
friends that
is.
live up there.
It's
Um,
beautiful though.
I'm sure. We still want to go out there, but want to go up there in the summer. I'm a Texan. We don't like cold. So
Stay away from Fairbanks in the wintertime
say what
or
you're
the Bering
thinking in
Sea.
Alaska. So
Yeah,
anything Alaska in the winter is no thank you.
it's
Appreciate it,
cold.
but no. Yeah. We're Texans. We like the cold, we like the warm. So we're gonna make a leap to the other real, the conviction part of real. Um, keeping it real, REAL, with conviction. You mentioned being in jail. You mentioned being in the Christian family. I know that's part of your story. Can you connect the two?
Yeah. So when I went to Alaska, like I said, I went up there and I met One Eye. Then that's when I met One Eye, and
I,
it's a great big sea lion that him and I didn't know though. I mean, I get to Alaska, and I mean I knew that stuff existed, but I've never seen it except for the zoo. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? I'm a little city dude, and I had farms and stuff, but not not ocean life.
So
So
this
when I hit
field
a
you became best buds.
well, he tried to get me one day.
Oh,
He attacked me when I first got there. I just had gotten there. I just came back from Oregon, and I had a red UNLV sweatshirt on, and I'm walking the docks, and all of a sudden I'm getting attacked by this guy, and he's 20 something, 4,000 pounds. I mean, he's a great, huge, big sea lion, and he's making this noise, and he jumps up on the dock, and I almost fall in the water. And I'm all of a sudden my heart's like pounding like 800 miles an hour, and I'm like, why? What did I do to you? And I'm running. He goes back down the water, and you could see the swirls in the water. He's coming, and he comes up in front of me again. I take off back the other way, and he goes back down, comes trying to get me, and I'm thinking to myself, what did I
what did
do?
you do?
And I run back the other way. I jump on the boat. He hits the boat, and it makes a like the boat rock. I slam the door, and I'm looking, and he's making all these noises, and I'm like, what the fudge did I do? And I look down, and I'm thinking, my shirt.
It's
That's
red.
the old. That's what I thought. I was like, it's red. And I take it off, and I'm like kind of sweating. And I throw it, and I threw it underneath the table. And I'm like looking out the window because he's trying to get me. I was scared to death. I'm brand new to fishing. I don't understand what the heck I did. And I
You know
open
it's
the
a big
door.
deal. So
It was huge, yeah. Well, anyways, in the meantime, I realized that he has one eye. One eye's gone. So he got in a fight somewhere. He's all scarred up on this side.
oh.
So I called him One Eye.
Uh-huh.
So, anyways, I walk out of the boat. This is about 5 minutes later, and he's still there. And I walk out on the dock, and I realize he's not mad anymore, but he's looking at me. And he's going up, and he's looking, and he's blowing water. He's being normal. And I'm like, it was the shirt. So from then on, I mean, I went up there, many times, and him and I met lots. But
Mhm.
that was when I knew don't wear red.
But we're red.
So I never wore red again, never.
Yeah, like, and red is a strange color for animals. Like we have bees, they don't like red either.
I
Um,
didn't know that.
bulls don't like it. They really don't like black. And that's why most beekeepers wear white. We have, you were mentioning about the farm. We have 5 acres, and we have an apiary, and we have the orchard that you were talking about. We have the orchard with like 20 some different trees. We have,
That's some neat
gardens for
stuff.
children to grow, and it's really nice. I have a blog that's the journey to fruitfulness, and I take all of our lessons, whether they're good, the bad, and the ugly, and I apply them spiritually to our life. So yeah,
That's neat.
I was kind of flashing to that when you were talking about that. So how'd you get from one eye to the rest?
So I end up in Kodiak, and I'm with Peru, and this is kind of I mentioned earlier. So I didn't know if you wanted to hear this part, but so I'm in Kodiak, and I have $100 left to my name. I have a room for 3 days.
Mhm.
Um. Anyways, I'm going to the docks. So there's basically, if you can imagine, 6 or 7, 8 different rows of docks and boats on both sides, hundreds of boats, and nothing. Okay. But
How
you're
do you
running out of
pick?
money. Huh?
How do you pick, or how do you
That's the thing.
you
It's
know where to
super
go?
hard. I didn't know. So I'm learning. I'm in Alaska. There's hundreds and hundreds of boats, and I don't know how to get a boat. So I go down, me and Peru, we go down, we smoke a bowl, and we go down to the docks. And uh now I'm starting to realize that all these boats have owners, and they're fishing, and there's different fisheries going on. So I didn't know which fishery or what I was going to do.
Mhm.
So I go down, and we start putting our name out to these different boats. We're two people, we're from out of town, we're looking for work.
Mhm.
We probably leave about 15, 20 different notes on boats. We go back to the motel, and we're smoking a bowl, and we hear the door knock,
Mhm.
and we're like, oh no, the smoke. So we try to air it out. Hey, hold on. We're like, just young little stupid people.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, hey, we're skipper from so and so. We both look, and we're like, well, there's nothing we can do. I mean, if he smells it, I mean, we open the door, and it was a young kid. He's probably 18 years old, younger than us, younger than I.
And he has a
And
boat?
he's like, pardon me. And a lot of times it's family. So a lot of times the fathers and grandpas pass it down to the kids because it's a family industry type thing.
Mhm.
So he hires us.
Mhm.
He likes us. He smokes a bowl with us. So we're like, thank goodness, we're not too beat up. So we get down to the boat, and he goes and buys our rain gear, our fishing license, and all this stuff, which is probably almost $1,000 back then. It's
Mhm.
probably a lot more now. And we start hanging out with these guys, and I start realizing all they want to do is party. I mean, they're 19 years old. He has tens of thousands of dollars. He knows everybody, and they want to throw parties every night. But I'm like, I got to work.
Mhm.
So, anyways, Peru and I walk up the dock one day, and it's called dragger, 2 draggers, and they're dirty. I mean, they're like dirty as in dirty to where they, it was like this. I mean, you can't even put the smell into the category.
Yeah.
Rough, 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 rough. And they're like, we need a guy right now.
Mhm.
But we knew it was a lot of money. There's tons and tons and tons of money out there doing dragging.
Mhm.
So he's like, I'll do it. So then I'm losing my friend now, and I'm running out of money, and I'm with the guy that has party central on his mind. So he goes down, grabs his bags, he grabs his fish license. He's going on a dragger, and I'm thinking at the time he's going to make tens of thousands. I was happy for him. I was like, "Go get it, man!" I gave him a hug. He takes
But
the
you're
last of the
stuck.
weed, huh?
You're stuck.
And I was stuck. So we he goes down, he runs. The guys come down to help him. He's gone, and I'm like, "Crap!" Now I'm in Alaska all by myself. I know nobody except for the guys I'm with.
Who are
Well, a couple
partners
days
who are
later,
wasting your money.
and I'm like grounded. I mean, I'm at the bottom of the boat hole. I'm like $100 and some left. So I'm thinking to myself, I got to find another job. I mean, there's no other way.
Hmm.
I walk up to the coffee shop and girls, and I don't drink coffee. I mean, but I was like, a coffee shop. I'm gonna go talk to somebody.
Uh-huh.
And I started talking to a lady, a young girl. She was probably my age.
Hmm.
And I just asked her, I was like, I'm looking for a job. I'm from out of town. And she's like, okay. She took my name and number down. I don't think nothing of it. About 4 or 5 hours later, the Christian couple come down. It was a wife and a husband. They were actually holding hands.
Oh.
This is way beyond my, it was super cool. I don't realize, I mean, I see it, but I don't put two and two together at the time. But they're holding hands, which is super neat.
Hmm.
So anyways, they're a Christian family, and they walk on the boat and they go, would you like a job? And I was like, sure. But I don't realize he has a crab boat. I don't realize he's been in the fishing industry. I don't realize nothing. I just know that this couple walks up and says, would you like a job? And I was like, absolutely. I said, I have all my gear. I have my fishing license. I have everything. I said, I just need one day to tell these guys that I'm not going to be here. I think would be rude. He's like, fine, I'll see you at 10 in the morning. I go out with the guys that night and I say, I'm going to be gone. The guys show up at 10 in the morning. I get on the boat, and that's where I met the Christian family, and I fished with them for years after that.
Nice.
And then I started running the boat later on, and yeah, so that's how my fishing career started in Kodiak.
Cool. Well, you've taken a lot of your experiences and you've put it into a book called Conviction, and then there's a second one called Deep Conviction. Can you tell us about those two books?
Yeah, so my first book, Conviction, was when I was locked up.
Mm-hmm.
I started writing when I was in Kenai, Alaska. I think I'd been in probably 3 years ish, give or take.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd already turned my life around. I started reading the Bible. So my head was kind of, focused on change. And I started seeing a bunch of stuff, and I seen a lot of bad things and heard a lot of bad things. Anyways, I'm in Kenai,
Mm-hmm.
and I write a story about one of the guys that I'd been in another prison with. So he gets a hold of it. I tell him I'm writing this book, but I write it in a way where, I put it in paragraph form. I put it in a chapter form, and I'm sitting there that's when I started writing. And I gave it to him, and he's a pretty bad guy. He broke into banks and robbed banks and you name it. He's $1 million scammer. I mean, he might be one of the better scammers that I've ever met, which that was the first time I've met him, but that's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I give him like 3 or 4 pages of himself,
Mm-hmm.
and I hand it to him. And he goes and shows everybody in the prison. Shane's writing a book. Look. So from then on, every one of the guys started coming up and telling me everything.
That's cool.
I mean, well, yes and no. There's a lot of bad things.
Some stuff you didn't want to know.
No. Miss Peterson, there's a lot of bad things. A lot of cold cases,
Mm-hmm.
So I started writing a book, but I was going to school.
Mm-hmm.
I was taking programs. I was organizing, GEDs. I was teaching, the guys school plus life lessons. They had more GED graduates than they've ever had in the history of the prison.
Nice.
It was super neat. I mean, the guys were trying. So I was writing a book. The guys some of them were turning their lives around, but a lot of the guys were continuing to be as ornery as hornets. So my first book is called Conviction, and it was consistent with what I was doing day to day while I was in prison, while meeting all these guys over and over and over again. Because I was transferred like 20 something times throughout my prison stay, which it wasn't good. It's very rare, but that's what happened. So I would go to one prison, I would meet all these guys. These guys would continue to do what they would do. I would go to another place, and then I would see them again, and they would tell me all their stuff, what they've just done. Then I would move somewhere else, and I'd meet some of the other guys. So it was kind of like a long tour for me.
So they sat down and told you their stories. Were you able to get some of the after?
Like
Rest
from
of the
after I got out,
Yeah, like the
I
rest of
actually
the story.
all I got from those guys were 90% of the time when they were in, but then they would tell me what they would do when they got out. So I did a 10-year sentence, which is a long time.
Mhm.
They would do 3 or 4 years. They would get out. They would commit all these crimes again. Then would come in and I would see them and they would tell me what they did. They would go back out. They would commit all these crimes. They would do blah, blah, blah. They would come back in. I would see them at somewhere else and they would tell me what they've done. If that
So
makes sense.
yeah, but what did you when you're keeping it real, you're keeping the stories real. Is there usually there's like life lessons in there somehow? I mean, besides
So, so like I said,
how to
I
get
was going
put
to,
back in, which we don't want to encourage.
no, 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 no. So, but you got to realize that some of the guys got out and stayed out.
Mhm.
I talked to one guy now. He is in Kenai, Alaska, and he is working for the schools and he is talking to kids.
Nice.
So I met him in Kenai. There's a few other ones that I talked to on Facebook. That's family, kids. He's married now. So there are some of the guys that I met in Alaska that are doing very, very, very well.
Good.
Me, when I was going through, all I could do was try to educate with what I was allowed to have to educate these guys. And a lot of it was God, though. I mean, I was going to church and we would have prayer groups and studies, but you can't make somebody change if they don't want to.
Yeah, no. But you were basically a light in the darkness.
Yeah, we did a fundraiser for the kids outside. It'd never been done before. I went to the head superintendent in Kenai and they're like, well, I don't know, you got to give me something in paper and writing. So I came up with something. I gave him a proposal bid slash and it worked. They liked it. It was all over the radio. I didn't know. As a matter of fact, one of the radio hosts from Alaska, Kenai, he was involved and him and I talked and I've been on his show a few times and he's
Nice.
definitely a very, very, super nice. And
So
he's called me. Go ahead.
so the books themselves, it has some of the stories of those guys that you went through with. I'm assuming yours is interlaced in between there as well. And showing,
Yes.
the highs and the lows and, what can happen to some versus what happened to others. Correct?
Yes, there is both of those in there. There's good and there's bad.
Hmm.
It was a hard trip for me.
So it's kind of basically about like choices and the choices that they make. Is that sound about right?
It goes on both sides. I mean, yes. I mean, you can choose to do what's good. Like I did taxes for some of the guys. I started doing taxes and some of the guys were bringing me their pay stubs. They just got in trouble for a DUI or they got in trouble for breaking into cars or whatever it was, but they were working and they would bring me their taxes. I would fill their taxes out. We would turn them into the government. However, 90% of the guys were stealing money from the government. And in one prison I was in, they got $750,000 in a few months before I got on. But you got to realize that's a lot of money for 1,200 inmates.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of money.
Gotcha. So what's in deep conviction? So conviction is a lot of the stories. What's a deep conviction? Is that more or what?
So in deep conviction is a branch off of conviction. I was only going to write about my prison life, and then I got a hold of a ghostwriter and a reporter, and they're saying, no, you're not going to just write about your prison life. You're going to write more. So when I wrote conviction, I was only going to write about prison itself. That was it. I wasn't going to write about anything about my fishing industry. I wasn't going to write about nothing else but jail. And then I talked to some people. I gave them the stuff and they were like, Shane, this is really good. You got to write more. And I was like, okay. And then deep conviction is it goes more into my family, kind of like my fishing. It goes into fishing a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It goes into my childhood a little bit, and then it goes back into prison. I haven't been able to write my third book. My sister was like, Shane, I think it was too soon. I said, okay, I will just leave it at that. So it kind of just, it's a branch off of conviction. It goes back into me being in Kenai, me being in Seward, and then back to Kenai and back to Anchorage. And then that's all.
Well, like I said before we started, and I meant it, is that you're taking your test and turning it into a testimony. You're taking your message and what you went through, and you're shining a light on something that society just tries to ignore, and it can't ignore it. You know, when you shine a light on it, you let others know kind of the path choices that some make and that some don't. And I think I commend you for that. That's really good. For those
Thank
who
you.
want to find out more about you online, how can they find you?
So you can go to shaneflemens.com, and it has my books on there.
Mm-hmm.
So you can go, or you can go to Amazon and get the books off of Amazon. It's Conviction by Shane Flemens, and then Deep Conviction by Shane Flemens.
Awesome. We're actually a little bit over time, but I wanted to make sure to honor your entire story, so we took a little bit longer. I'll give you about 2 more minutes. Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I just want to thank you very much for having me. Fishing is a dangerous job. If you guys decide to go fishing, make sure you get on a decent boat, because they are ranked #1 in the world for disappearances. So just be real careful out there.
And watch out for one eye.
Watch out for. So tell them I said hi.
No problem. For anybody else who wants to get a hold of Shane Flemens or find out more about his books, Conviction or Deep Conviction, you can find him at shaneflemens.com. That's ShaneFlemens.com. And Shane, thank you for coming on today. Really appreciate you being transparent and talking about, you know, what all has gone and transpired up to now, and what all, you know, went into conviction and deep conviction. And thank you for keeping it real.
Thank you very much. God bless. Thank
Okay.
you for having me, Miss Peterson.
My pleasure. And thank you guys for listening to The Journey is Real. We talk to real people with real passions who share a real portion of their hearts. I'm CJ Peterson of cjpetersonwrites.com. Until next time.